Well, hello there. This is Vitriol, the chess noob, learning and having fun with chess. Recently, I've really been enjoying learning and playing the Max Langer Vienna Gambit. Now, this is a bit different to the usual Vienna Gambit, which is the Falkby variation. However, it's a really winning line. Had another game recently. Oh, let's go take a look. I have the white pieces, of course, and of course, it starts with the Vienna game Max Langer defense. E4, E5, knight C3, knight C6. Now, historically, I've been playing bishop to C4, and that's the way that most YouTubers will tell you to play the Max Langer defense. And effectively, you're hoping for the full copycat variation, and once you get that, you have some really awesome fun with queen to G4, and then potentially you even get the Meitner-Mises gambit. However, after the bishop to C4, Black doesn't have to play like this. Black can just play the two knights, knight to F6. And here you basically enter into the bishop's opening, the Berlin-Vienna hybrid. And it's kind of a close game, a little bit like an Italian. I just don't like playing those lines. And as I moved further and further into the intermediate level, more and more people who played the Max Langer defense would play that two-knight setup. And that is actually the best move. So it's, in my view, quite a bit more fun, especially drawing the player with Black, who might know a little bit on how to play against the Vienna game with the Max Langer defense, to play the Max Langer version of the Vienna Gambit, the immediate F4. Because here, this really takes most players with the black pieces out of their comfort zone. I had a look at Lichess, and in this position, white wins 54% of the time versus black 43%, so that's really good. When I look at my games in this position, I win 2/3 of the time. And that's even when Black knows the best move, which is to accept the gambit. Even in this position, I still win 2/3 of the time, and a little bit different to the Falkby variation of the Vienna Gambit, where they potentially have the main line. Here, Black doesn't really have a killer move. Like, white is kind of good, kind of okay with every response with Black. Now, against this move, I normally would recommend knight to F3. And the idea here is to, defend that H4 square, potentially expecting queen H4 with check. The interesting thing here is that Stockfish will actually reckon D4 immediately is the best move. In fact, inviting the queen here, which requires you to bomb cloud the king, and then just some really, fireworks, take place here. Soon we might bring the knight to D5 with that potential attack there as well. However, with D4, I would say that, if both white and black play perfectly accurately, black is slightly better, but it's not particularly good for white. So I don't recommend D4 actually in this position. I recommend knight, because in this position, we kind of invite black to make some mistakes. And here, my opponent of the black pieces, rated in the mid-1300s, immediately makes a mistake. So very commonly in this position, black will want to play G5. And this is a move that's very reminiscent of the King's Gambit. However, in this game, I think they thought, maybe that will cause problems straight up, and so they decided to play F6 first, and that's a mistake. It's about plus 1.5 in this position, even where black is up a point of material, which signifies a seriously problematic position. And if you have ever seen any videos from American Grandmaster Ben Feingold, he will say that you should never play F6 in the opening. In this case, he is right. You should definitely not play that move. I can see what they're getting at. They're trying to sort of double defend potentially the G5 square to prepare for G5 next turn. This is potentially at a superficial level a good move, because if you then get G4, it looks like black has trapped this knight. It looks like, there's potentially no real good places for that knight to go. It doesn't work, however, because very often in this position, in a Max Lange Vienna Gambit, we are completely happy to sacrifice the king's knight if we can damage black's kingside defenses. And especially after this move, notice this potential weak light square diagonal along that f7 square to the king. All right. Here I decided to play d3. I knew that d4 was probably better, but I decided to play from a psychological perspective quite conservatively because I wanted black to play g5. I thought they were thinking that already, and I didn't want to distract them from that strategy by potentially pushing that pawn there, and then they're going to be worried, should they move their knight first? So I decided to play d3 from a psychological perspective, and I was right. They now played g5. Another mistake. Bishop to b4 apparently is best. That's a bit obscure in this position. Obviously, I had this plan here. And notice that is now very, very seriously weakening that light square diagonal to the king. I can sacrifice the knight. A knight captures g5. Brilliant move, offering that knight for a sacrifice. However, in this position, black, I think, gets a bit spooked. And they decide not to take the knight, opening up that diagonal maybe for their queen. That is a blunder because queen to h5 with check, no defenses, no development. They've moved their e, f, and g pawns. They're in some serious trouble. And in fact, here there is a mate in 5. Now, I didn't know that there was a mate in 5 here, and so I end up playing a little bit more conservatively. I don't find the mate. However, it looks really bad for black. Black's king forced to move forward. That's their only move. I'm just going to highlight all the trappy moves I've got here. Here, queen now infiltrates, king forced onto the d6 square. Now here, I did see, I did wonder, should I take with the bishop? And that actually is the correct move. What it looks like is bishop captures with check. You can see king forced to the c5 square, here to c5, and now queen infiltrates to here. Only one square left for the king. King must move to b6, and now queen to b5, checkmate. So that's the mating line. And in the Max Lange defense, so the Max Lange Vienna Gambit, when we have this sort of line, very often the idea is dragging the king out, bringing them into the center of the board, and potentially trying to find either a mate or a serious winning attack, potentially winning material, potentially black's queen. Now, in this game, I, as I said, was a bit worried that I was going to eventually end up getting my queen trapped. So I decided not to play that move. Played the queen to d5 instead, but queen now drops back over here. I now decide to just get rid of some of these pawns. They, bring out their knight with an attack, and here I give a check. Again, possibly not the most accurate, but still very, very winning. Now, black should probably have moved their king back to e8, but they decided to bring it forward. That's good for me. Now with check, forced here. Now the bishop with check, forced to b5, and now moving the pawn forward. Oh, so this pawn forward with check, king to the a6 square, dragged forward all the way to the queen side. Now the d pawn moves forward with check. They try to block here with capture, double check. Also, of course, with an attack on the knight, take the knight with check. They capture back with their pawn. And now, here I thought for a little bit. Obviously, they've got an attack on the knight. And for a second time in the game, I sacrifice the knight by ignoring the attack. I play bishop with the check. King now forced to the b8 square. Again, ignore that attack. I move the rook instead, because if they take, that takes their eye off the b5 square. They capture, it's a blunder. There's now mating for again, and now it's really beautiful. Rook to b5, check. Forced move is to block with the bishop. Check, king forced into that position. Check, double check. The rook is defended by the queen. King forced here. And here I missed an absolutely beautiful mate in one, which is rook to c8, double checkmate, and you will notice the king is trapped, can't take the queen, can't capture the rook because of the open discovered check with the queen. Absolutely beautiful. I didn't see that actually in the game. I played a rook with the attack on the queen with a discovered check here. Queen forced to block, and of course that is mate. Good game, GG. The big takeaway from this game is to consider playing the Vienna Gambit in the Max Langer defense if you are a Vienna game player. The big YouTubers tend not to promote it, but it's easily as fun and as winning as the typical Folkby Vienna Gambit. I hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching.